In the world of women's basketball, a shocking truth has emerged. The WNBA punishes words but ignores violence. Recently, the league fined Sophie Cunningham for her honesty, while dangerous fouls that could end Caitlin Clark's career went completely unpunished. This isn't just an irony, it points to a dangerous WNBA strategy aimed at securing a lucrative TV deal by silencing any criticism. Sophie's case isn't isolated, it's a warning to every player: stay quiet or be crushed by the system. Why does the league seem more interested in controlling what players say than in protecting them on the court? Stay tuned to find out what's really happening behind the WNBA's curtains. Caitlin Clark isn't just a rookie, she's the force driving women's basketball, attracting millions of new eyes to the WNBA. Her arrival promised an era of unprecedented growth, a new dawn for the league. However, what should have been a celebration has turned into an exhibition of physical and dangerous play, with the WNBA becoming more of a spectator than a protector of its biggest star. Her presence has the power to fill arenas, sell out tickets, and push audience metrics to levels never seen before. But behind all the glory and the spotlight, there's a dark reality the WNBA seems to be ignoring. Clark's absence from the court due to injuries is already costing the Indiana Fever dearly, and with every missed game, the weight grows heavier. The league benefits from her success but shows a terrifying indifference to her safety on the court. It's a contradiction that, on its own, points to a much bigger problem. What does the WNBA truly value? The integrity of its players or the hype they generate? In games, fouls against Clark seem constant. But the reality is darker, full of dangerous plays that could have devastating consequences. The clearest example came from a blindside hit by Marina Maberry, a move that could have ended Clark's season but didn't even draw a whistle. There was also the play where she almost suffered a serious eye injury, courtesy of DJ Carrington. And once again, the referees just shrugged it off. This lack of protection isn't an accident, it's a pattern that, for many fans, has become impossible to ignore. It's as if the league is giving tacit permission for the game against Clark to become more aggressive than usual. This indifference creates a dangerous precedent, not just for Clark, but for all players. Where is the line? The league stays silent, and in doing so, it sends a clear message: some hits are acceptable, as long as there's no whistle. The WNBA's first blow against Sophie Cunningham came after a viral TikTok. On the platform, the player simply vented, calling the referees useless, a criticism that many players felt but no one dared to express publicly. This bluntness cost her $500, a high price for a moment of honesty that resonated with thousands of fans. The video became a symbol of frustration, earning support from those who felt the WNBA wasn't listening to anyone. The league's disciplinary action seemed disproportionate. The irony was palpable. While dangerous plays on the court went unpunished, a simple phrase off the court resulted in a financial penalty. This event wasn't just an isolated incident, it marked the beginning of an escalating series of punishments that would turn Sophie into a figure of resistance. And what the league didn't realize is that this fine, instead of silencing her, only emboldened her. Instead of backing down, Sophie doubled down. On a podcast, she deepened her critique, explaining that dissatisfaction with the officiating wasn't hers alone but a feeling shared by many players across the league. This candor earned her a harsher penalty, $1,500 and a clear warning shot from the league. The message was clear: we don't want your opinion, just your silence. This second fine solidified her image as a reluctant rebel. She wasn't just defending her own position but giving voice to a frustration that had been building in locker rooms. The WNBA, in trying to impose its authority, was inadvertently turning Sophie into a spokesperson. What the league saw as a disciplinary act, fans saw as an attempt at censorship. Most recently, Sophie crossed another invisible line by suggesting that referees showed favoritism toward Paige Buchers. With that, the WNBA fined her for the third time. 3 incidents, 3 punishments, all for daring to say out loud what countless players and fans had whispered for years. The league's disciplinary record framed Sophie not as a rebel seeking attention, but as the face of a much bigger problem the WNBA refuses to confront. This was the turning point. The fines were no longer about discipline but about an attempt at complete silencing. The league was sending a message to all athletes: honesty has a cost, and it will be high. This third punishment turned Sophie into a martyr for the fans and a symbol of the battle for freedom of expression within the league. The fan community exploded in outrage. Social media was flooded with the hashtag supporting Sophie, which quickly hit the trending topics on Twitter and TikTok. This reaction generated millions of views and passionate debates in comment sections. But perhaps the most striking symbol of support came in the form of money. Multiple GoFundMe campaigns were launched by fans, determined to show Sophie that she wasn't alone in this fight. The contributions poured in so quickly that the total of her fines was covered within hours. This action carried more weight than any hashtag. It proved that fans were willing to put their wallets where their convictions were. For them, it was a direct message to the WNBA: silencing voices doesn't silence the truth. This reaction was a clear sign that what started as a disciplinary action had turned into a rallying cry for transparency across the entire league. The WNBA seems to be out of step with other major leagues. In the NBA, for example, open criticism of officiating is not just tolerated, but woven into the league's culture. Legends like Charles Barkley built entire careers on brutally honest commentary, and Draymond Green has spent years calling out officiating on live broadcasts and podcasts. Were they fined? Yes, but those fines seemed more like punctuation marks than punishments designed to silence. More importantly, the NBA never tried to erase their voices, recognizing that controversy fuels conversation, headlines, and ratings. The NFL tells a similar story. The no call in the Saints-Rams game in 2019 was a disaster that could have sunk the league, but the NFL embraced transparency, admitting errors and letting the debate happen openly. In the world of the WNBA, the story is drastically different. Here, the league punishes authenticity and transparency in favor of a carefully polished corporate image. This is an approach that alienates fans who crave a real connection with the athletes they admire. While Draymond Green can criticize officiating and be applauded for his honesty, Sophie Cunningham faces a cruel reality. She now runs the risk of being labeled difficult, of being isolated in locker rooms, or of being overlooked for future opportunities. For her, the risk is clear: every fine erodes not only her bank account but her standing in the league. It's a brutal paradox. A league fighting for relevance is choosing to suppress the very voices that could help it grow. By valuing corporate silence over player honesty, the WNBA sends a terrifying message to every athlete: the hypocrisy is glaring. The WNBA fines a player for expressing her opinion on TikTok but ignores dangerous plays that could harm its biggest star's career. The message is chillingly clear: words will cost you. Violence will not. This isn't discipline. This is a double standard that destroys the league's credibility from the inside out. The brutality of the comparison writes itself. The NFL, which has practically trademarked officiating drama, still manages to appear more transparent and accountable than the WNBA. The NBA, which thrives on unfiltered commentary, has shown that allowing players to speak freely adds value rather than detracts from it. And yet, the WNBA, a league fighting for relevance, chooses the opposite path, prioritizing image management over the safety and trust of its athletes. Fans are not blind. They see that other leagues, with much higher stakes and financial backing, are capable of embracing criticism and even turning it into a strength. They realize that Charles Barkley's honesty made him an icon, and that the NFL survived officiating controversies by admitting its mistakes instead of hiding them. And then they see Sophie Cunningham, a rising player, being fined 3 times in a few weeks, simply for saying what everyone else is thinking. The comparison does more than embarrass the WNBA, it threatens its future. Because fans don't just watch games, they buy into the legitimacy of the competition. And if they believe that officiating is flawed and that the league is silencing those who point it out, that legitimacy crumbles. When trust is gone, it doesn't matter how many sponsorships are signed or how many viral clips are made, the foundation falls apart. That's why the stakes are so high, and why the league's current strategy seems so incredibly short-sighted. Sophie Cunningham's case raises an inevitable question: is the league really willing to sacrifice its most important players to protect its image and its deals? The evidence points to a terrifying conclusion. The WNBA seems more afraid of fans hearing the truth than of fans seeing Caitlin Clark get knocked to the floor without a whistle. Protecting the image matters more than protecting the player. This is the twisted logic now on full display. When the league punishes someone for speaking out, it's not just about a fine, it's a message that player safety and truth are secondary. The silence the league tries to enforce isn't about maintaining order, but about maintaining control at all costs. This calculated strategy puts the health of the entire league at risk. It shows that the WNBA, in its desperation for a polished product, is willing to sacrifice the very people who make it worth watching. Behind the curtains, the whispers are getting louder. Multiple internal sources have hinted that the WNBA's aggressive response to Sophie Cunningham isn't just about her words. It's about timing. It's believed that the league is finalizing a new multi-million-dollar television deal, one that depends on projecting a flawless product to sponsors and broadcast partners. In this context, criticism of referees isn't treated as fair commentary, but as a direct threat to the brand's market value. Every fine imposed on Sophie feels less like discipline and more like an insurance policy designed to keep uncomfortable truths from surfacing. Sophie has become collateral damage in a larger campaign to enforce silence across the entire system. The paradox couldn't be sharper. The league is more afraid of fans hearing the truth than of seeing Caitlin Clark get knocked to the floor without a whistle. Protecting the image matters more than protecting the player. The impact of this controversy wasn't limited to Sophie, it extended to her family. When her younger sister, Lindsay, spoke out about the dangers of poor officiating and the risks it posed to Sophie's health, the reaction was swift and brutal. Trolls targeted Lindsay with personal insults, trying to discredit her voice in the same way the league was punishing Sophie's. But Sophie fired back with a sharp, unapologetic response, making it clear that she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for her family's dignity as well. That single exchange poured gasoline on an already raging fire. The debate deepened and split the community into two camps: those who believed Sophie was exposing a systemic failure, and those who insisted she had crossed an invisible line. The family feud proves that the conflict extends outside the courts. It showed that the confrontation wasn't just about basketball but about a personal battle for respect. What started as a series of fines has transformed into a large-scale movement. For Indiana Fever fans, Sophie's battle is inseparable from Caitlin Clark's plight. Both cases embody the bigger question: will the league protect its stars or continue to let them take hits, on and off the court, without accountability? Fans see the pattern clearly. If Sophie can be fined 3 times for speaking, and Clark can endure dangerous plays without intervention, the problem is systemic. That's why the atmosphere around the controversy feels less like a debate and more like a movement. Fans aren't just calling for justice for Sophie or protection for Clark. They're seeing this as a battle for the integrity of the league itself. The collective voice is growing louder, and the league can't afford to ignore it for much longer. This story has forced fans to ask uncomfortable questions about what the WNBA truly values. Sophie Cunningham's story has already gone far beyond one player or one set of fines. It has forced the league into the spotlight and forced fans to ask uncomfortable questions about what the WNBA really values. Is this the beginning of a long overdue movement for transparency and accountability, where players and fans finally demand the standards that professional basketball deserves? Or is it just another temporary crackdown, a silencing maneuver designed to keep things quiet until the next scandal inevitably erupts? And if Sophie is just the first victim of what some are calling a silent contract, then who comes next? For every fan who has watched Caitlin Clark take unpunished blows, the fear is obvious. Her name might be the next to be added to that list. The choice now no longer belongs to the league alone, but to everyone who cares about the game. The story of Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark forces us to ask a final question: if honesty has become a liability, what else is the league willing to sacrifice to protect its deals? The contrast is brutal. The WNBA, a league fighting for relevance, punishes authenticity and silences its voices, prioritizing image over the safety and trust of its athletes. For fans, the message is disheartening. How much longer will we be willing to support a league that protects its image, not its players? If you believe Caitlin Clark deserves to be protected, comment Protect22 below. And if you believe the truth matters more than the illusion, share this video and help expose the quiet deal that punishes words while letting violence slide. Because, in the end, this isn't just about Sophie or Clark. It's about whether the WNBA has the courage to stand for justice or if it will continue to silence the very voices that make it worth watching.